Ray and I describe a number of the books of the Old Testament as theological history, basically everything between Genesis and Esther. And that raises the question, what do we mean by theological or prophetic history? Is it really history? And if so, what does it mean to call it theological history? Well, we do mean that it is really history in that it is describing things that are happening in space and time. But we also recognize that you don't just talk about the past in neutral terms, that there is a selection of events, you emphasize certain events, and you interpret those events. And we argue that the driving force of what's selected, what's emphasized, and how it's interpreted is theology. That is, it's trying to teach us about what God is doing in the world. So, and we also think that, especially with something like the Exodus, it's really important to emphasize the fact that the Exodus actually did happen. It's not as if it's a good story that tells us about a God who saves, and therefore it doesn't matter whether it actually happened. I mean, this is a story that is telling us that God has a track record of saving those who are beyond their own resources. And if God didn't actually do it, then it really doesn't have that significance. If you look at Psalm 77, for instance, the psalmist there is in the midst of a present disaster, and he's sort of shaking his fist at God and saying he can't sleep at night because he sees no way out of his problems. But at a certain point in the psalm, he looks to the past, and specifically to the crossing of the Red Sea, and that gives him confidence to live in a troubled present as well as hope for the future, because he sees that his God can save people when they're beyond their own resources. And the Exodus is the source of his hope.